Hey, welcome back to Break the Dichotomy. Today, we're diving into a strategic argument that honestly totally reframes the entire gun debate. It's a doctrine called mutually assured respect, and it suggests that the real path to a more civil society isn't through taking guns away, but by making sure everyone has one. Yeah, I know. So let's get into it.
Okay, so this quote really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. Manners may make it the man, but Mr. Colt make it the manners. It's not just some snappy line, right? It's a whole philosophy. The idea is that true civility, real respect, it's not just about being nice. It's enforced by the very real, tangible presence of consequence.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we're going to look at the stark premise this whole strategy is built on. Then we'll unpack the core theory itself and the kind of wild psychological mechanism that supposedly makes it all work. After that, we'll dig into some history and finally look at the ultimate political endgame this whole thing is shooting for. All right, so the first big idea, the premise this whole doctrine is built on, is, well, it's pretty blunt. It argues that the fight over gun control, at least the way it's been fought for decades, is already over. It's lost. And this isn't about giving up. It's about waking up to a totally new strategic reality. And it all starts with the sheer numbers. We're talking over 400 million firearms in civilian hands in the US. I mean, think about that. That's literally more guns than people. You combine that with huge Supreme Court decisions like Heller and Bruin that have cemented the right to carry, and the argument becomes pretty clear. Trying to get rid of all those guns isn't a strategy, it's a fantasy.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because it's not just about culture, it's about pure math. The US Constitution was built to be incredibly hard to change. To pass an amendment, you need 38 states to agree. That means just 13 states, which could represent a really small fraction of the actual population, can block anything, forever. So, a legislative solution? It's basically a mathematical impossibility.
Okay, so if that's the reality, if the old fight is over, what's the new strategy? This is where we get into the core theory itself. It's about moving from fighting reality to using that reality to create a whole new kind of deterrence.
So think about it like this. A bully, whether it's a person on the street or even the state, thrives on asymmetry. They feel powerful when they know their target can't really fight back. The risk is low, so intimidation works. But what happens when you introduce parity? When both sides are visibly armed? All of a sudden, that calculation completely changes. The risk of starting something becomes incredibly high, and that encourages caution, not conflict. And this is the end goal, strategically speaking. It's about creating what game theorists call a Nash equilibrium. You can just think of it as a giant Mexican standoff. It's a state where the cost of being aggressive is so catastrophic for everyone, where nobody can make a move without risking their own skin, that the only rational, logical choice left is to back down, to de-escalate. It's a peace born from deterrence.
Okay, but how does this actually work in our brains? You know, on a gut level. Well, the argument is that it taps into our most primal, ancient response system, what some people call the lizard brain. This is the key psychological flip. An aggressor usually starts from a place of dominance. They see a target they think is helpless. But the moment you introduce visible parity, the moment they see their target can absolutely fight back with equal force, a much deeper instinct takes over: survival. The lizard brain basically hijacks the system. And suddenly, being dominant isn't the priority anymore. Staying alive is. At that point, conflict just isn't worth the risk. And you can see it right here, visually. It's like a switch gets flipped inside the brain. The whole strategy is designed to crank down that dominance impulse that fuels aggression and crank way up the survival instinct that fuels caution. It makes an aggressor's own self-preservation the single biggest reason for them to behave. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds like some wild, abstract theory. But proponents of this idea will tell you, hold on, we've actually seen this movie before. They point to some incredibly powerful real-world examples where this exact idea was put into practice. And the prime example they point to is the civil rights movement. In 1964, you had the Deacons for Defense, a group of armed black veterans who literally stood guard to protect activists from the KKK. Then, a couple years later, the Black Panther Party started their famous armed cop-watching patrols in Oakland to deter police brutality. And that action, it triggered a massive and immediate political backlash. And the results, according to the historical record, weren't some abstract idea. They were real, and they were immediate. KKK caravans would literally turn around when they saw the Deacons. Police in Oakland started behaving very differently when they knew armed observers were watching. The bullies backed down. The key takeaway, according to this doctrine, is that this wasn't about starting violence. It was about using the visible capacity for self-defense to stop violence.
So, what's the end goal here? What's the point of all this? Well, it's bigger than just stopping a bully on the street. We're talking about the ultimate political endgame, to completely neutralize the gun as a political weapon and break a major pillar of modern American politics.
Now this right here is maybe the most powerful piece of evidence in the whole argument. Before the Black Panthers, open carry was an absolute sacred cow for conservatives. But in 1967, the moment a group of black leftists started exercising that exact same right, suddenly then Governor Ronald Reagan and even the NRA get a complete 180 and supported a law to ban open carry in California. The principle didn't matter anymore, only who was holding the gun. So what does that tell us? According to this doctrine, it exposes the whole game. For decades, the fear that the liberals are coming to take your guns has been one of the single most effective political tools to get conservatives to the polls. But what happens if the left is universally openly armed? Well, that whole narrative just collapses. You can't credibly claim they're coming for your guns when they're all carrying their own. The threat becomes meaningless. And that brings us right to the final and most provocative question posed by this doctrine. It reframes the whole thing away from laws and policy and puts the focus squarely on identity and power. The argument is that for a certain segment of the population, gun ownership isn't just a right, it's a core piece of their political identity. It's something that makes them feel exclusive, powerful, special. And so this strategy doesn't just ask about changing tactics. It asks, as you see on the screen, are you ready to take away the one thing that makes the right feel special? It's a question designed to be uncomfortable, for sure, and one that really gets to the very heart of the political endgame here.